She froze outside that break room. They were laughing, mocking her clothes, her work, her existence, but here's what they didn't know. That morning she'd gotten into one of the world's top business schools, full scholarship. 10 years later, she walked back in, bought the company and fired every single one. This is revenge with Mireya, let's go. What Marlowe heard in that break room would fuel a decade of calculated revenge. Marlowe Hendricks froze outside the employee break room at Titan Ridge Financial in downtown Toronto. Through the thin walls, voices cut like knives. Did you see what she wore today? It's like she shops at a thrift store for the blind. That was Cashin Whitmore. Laughter erupted. Vesper Chen, Daxon Reeves, and worst of all, Thorne Blackwell, the golden boy whose father sat on the board. 3 years here and she still doesn't understand basic portfolio management, Vesper added. How hasn't she been fired? Marlowe's coffee cup nearly slipped, but what they didn't know was that morning she'd received an acceptance letter to Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, full scholarship. She pushed open the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Morning, everyone. Their guilty faces told her everything they knew she'd heard. But Marlowe's revenge was already beginning, and they had no idea what was coming. When Marlowe disappeared 6 months later, she left behind only a resignation letter and a promise to herself. 6 months later, Marlowe resigned. Thorne barely looked up, finally realized she wasn't cut out for this. But during those final 2 weeks, something changed in Marlowe. She stopped caring what they thought. She read Harvard Business Review during lunch. She documented everything, every dismissive email, every stolen idea, every meeting she'd been excluded from. On her last day at 5 p.m., she packed her desk and walked out with her head high. No farewell party, no acknowledgement. As she drove across the border to Chicago and Northwestern, Marlowe made a promise. She would return not as a victim, but as a force of nature. What Marlowe learned over the next 2 years would transform her into someone they'd never recognize. While they climbed ladders, Marlowe was building an empire. Northwestern broke Marlowe down to rebuild her stronger. She studied 18 hours daily while classmates partied. She networked at 6 a.m. while they slept. Her breakthrough came during a case competition. Her presentation on turning around a failing financial company was ruthless and brilliant, identifying toxic cultures like Titan Ridge's and cutting out the rot. She won and caught the attention of Sable Kensington, a billionaire venture capitalist. That wasn't just business strategy, Sable said. That was personal, someone hurt you. Yes, Marlowe admitted. Good, revenge, properly channeled, is the most powerful fuel in business. Sable offered her an internship that became a full-time position. By graduation, Marlowe was being headhunted everywhere. But when Sable launched a private equity firm for hostile takeovers, Marlowe had one condition. When the time comes, I want Titan Ridge Financial. Over 8 years, Marlowe became the most feared corporate raider in North America, with Titan Ridge always in her sights. They called her the Valkyrie, but no one at Titan Ridge connected her to the quiet girl they'd destroyed. 8 years later, Marlowe Hendricks had vanished. In her place stood Marlowe Ravencroft, her mother's maiden name. Forbes called her the Valkyrie of Wall Street. She'd completed 43 hostile takeovers, her net worth $340 million. She wore Italian suits costing thousands. She commanded rooms with a voice that made executives straighten their spines. She'd become unrecognizable. But she never forgot. Through investigators and industry reports, she tracked Titan Ridge. Thorne was now VP, riding his father's coattails. Vesper was senior director, hoarding power. Daxon had become managing director through backstabbing. Cashin had plateaued. And Quinton Ashford, the manager who'd watched her suffer, was now COO. Titan Ridge had grown recklessly. High turnover, discrimination lawsuits, stagnant stock. They were vulnerable. In September 2024, Sable called. The Beaumont Family Trust is selling 23% of Titan Ridge. They want new leadership. Marlowe's grip tightened. Set up the meeting, it's time to go home. But when Marlowe walked back through Titan Ridge's doors, not a single person recognized her. The moment Thorne shook Marlowe's hand, his fate was sealed, but he had no idea who she was. The Titan Ridge boardroom overlooked Lake Ontario from the 42nd floor. Marlowe arrived in charcoal Armani and crimson silk, power incarnate. At 10 a.m. the executives entered. Thorne Blackwell first, eyeing her with appreciation. Zero recognition. Vesper Chen next, annoyed at the interruption. Nothing. Daxon Reeves checking his phone self-importantly. Cashan Whitmore dismissive as ever. Quinton Ashford trying to project confidence. None of them saw her. They saw Marlowe Ravencroft, successful investor, not Marlowe Hendricks, the woman they'd broken. CEO Julian Tidewater outlined Titanridge's problems. Marlowe listened, took notes, then delivered her assessment. Your problem isn't market conditions, it's internal. You value appearance over substance, connections over competence, politics over performance. Silence. If Ravencroft Capital acquires controlling stake, there will be significant restructuring, leadership changes. Not everyone in this room will survive. They should have been terrified. Instead, they nodded confidently, certain their positions were safe. As Marlowe left that day, she carried a list of 12 overlooked employees and a plan to destroy the people who'd destroyed her. What Marlowe's investigation uncovered gave her everything she needed. Marlowe deployed forensic accountants, organizational psychologists, and conducted 73 exit interviews with former employees. The findings were devastating. Thorne had stolen credit for his team's work for 12 years. 3 analysts had quit because of him. Vesper's department had 47% annual turnover. She'd blocked 17 promotions to protect her power. Daxon had destroyed 3 careers through political manipulation. Cashan was simply a parasite. Quinton had known about everything and done nothing. But the investigation also found 12 exceptional employees who'd been systematically overlooked despite brilliant performance. Marlowe made a list: Temperance Ashford, Hawthorne Mills, Octavia Lawn, Zenith Park, and 8 others. These would be her army. On day 60, Marlowe's acquisition was approved. She now owned 47%, controlling interest. The executives had exactly 30 days before they'd learn who she really was. When Marlowe announced the restructuring, 3 executives went pale, but still didn't recognize her. The all-hands meeting packed the auditorium. Marlowe walked on stage in a navy suit worth more than most monthly salaries. Over 60 days, my team conducted a comprehensive audit, she began. What we found was unacceptable. She clicked to her slide. Effective immediately, Quinton Ashford is stepping down as COO, Thorne Blackwell is removed as VP, Vesper Chen is no longer Senior Director, Daxon Reeves is relieved as Managing Director, Cashan Whitmore is terminated. Gasps, shock, the 5 executives froze in disbelief. Additionally, we're promoting 12 individuals whose contributions have been systematically undervalued. She read the names. The overlooked were now the leaders. Thorne stood, face red. You can't just... I can, I'm the majority shareholder, and I've seen your performance metrics, Mr. Blackwell. You've been stealing credit for a decade. Vesper tried to object. Marlowe buried her with turnover statistics. Daxon demanded private discussion. No, transparency is a core value now. As Marlowe left, Thorne grabbed her arm. You can't do this. Do you know who my father is? Marlowe looked at his hand, then his eyes. Yes, and I have photos of him signing off on your removal personally. He told me you'd been riding his coattails your entire career. Thorne's hand dropped. But the real reckoning was coming. In 30 days, they'd learn exactly who she was. Over the next month, Marlowe watched them scramble and realized revenge was more complicated than she'd imagined. The transition period was warfare. Thorne rallied board members but found Marlowe had gotten there first. Vesper spread rumors, but the newly promoted employees were already improving morale. Daxon threatened legal action. Marlowe's lawyers buried him in evidence. Cashan simply left. Quinton begged for any position. Marlowe refused each time. But something unexpected happened. Working with the overlooked employees she'd promoted, Marlowe saw herself in their gratitude and hunger to prove themselves. Temperance Ashford presented a restructuring plan, better than anything the old leadership had produced in 3 years. Why didn't you speak up? Marlowe asked. I did, no one listened. After a while you just stopped trying. The words hit hard. Marlowe remembered that feeling, the learned invisibility. Late one night, Sable Kensington found Marlowe staring at the Toronto skyline. You did it, everything you said you would, so why don't you look happy? I destroyed them, but revenge didn't fix what they broke. You can demolish your enemies, Marlowe, but the real challenge is building something better, otherwise you're just perpetuating the same cycle. As the 30-day deadline approached, Marlowe prepared for the reveal, but was no longer certain what she wanted from it. The moment Marlowe revealed who she was, they finally understood. They'd been judged by their victim. Marlowe scheduled the final meeting for exactly 10 years after the break room incident. All 5 executives arrived at a small conference room, not the grand boardroom but where junior staff met, intentional. Marlowe entered wearing a simple grey dress, hair in a ponytail, like 10 years ago. Something flickered in Vesper's eyes. This is about 10 years ago, October 27th, the break room on the 14th floor. The temperature dropped. Marlowe played the audio recording, their voices mocking her, every cruel word. When it finished, silence. "My name wasn't always Ravencroft," Marlowe said quietly. "I was Marlowe Hendricks. I worked here 2011 to 2014. I sat 3 cubicles from you, Thorn. I was invisible to you, worse than invisible, someone you could mock and step over." Vesper's hand covered her mouth. "Oh my God." "You destroyed people," Marlowe continued, "not just me." She detailed each person's crimes, the stolen work, the blocked promotions, the ruined careers, the cowardly enabling. Vesper spoke first. "I'm sorry, I was insecure, I became what I feared." Thorn's face reddened with shame. "My father always said I disappointed him, so I took from others what I couldn't create." The confessions continued, not all genuine, but for the first time they were forced to look. "What happens now?" Quentin asked. "Now you leave. Your severance is generous, more than you deserve. You'll rebuild elsewhere at a lower level, and maybe you'll remember this the next time you see someone struggling." She walked to the door, turned back. "I spent 10 years becoming someone who could stand here as your equal, but the truth is I always was, you just couldn't see it." As they left Titanridge for the last time, they carried something heavier than job loss, the knowledge of who they'd truly been. 6 months later, Marlowe discovered the real revenge wasn't destruction, it was transformation. By spring 2025, Titanridge was transformed. Transparent culture, open communication, real meritocracy. The 12 promoted employees thrived, stock price up 23%, client satisfaction at all-time highs. But Marlowe faced new challenges. Some remaining old guard resisted change. Building was harder than destroying. One morning, Temperance Ashford knocked on Marlowe's office door. "There's someone here to see you." A young woman entered, early 20s, nervous, clutching a resume. "Ms. Ravencroft, I'm Lyric Delaney. I'm interviewing for the junior analyst position. I just wanted to say, I've read about what you did here, how you changed everything. I've been overlooked my whole career, 2 years at my last company, and they never saw me. Your story gave me hope that it's possible to be seen." Marlowe looked at this young woman and saw herself 10 years ago. "Sit down, Lyric, tell me about your work." As Lyric spoke, Marlowe realized this was the real revenge, not destroying the people who'd hurt her, but creating a place where the overlooked could be seen, where talent mattered more than connections, where the next Marlowe Hendricks wouldn't have to wait 10 years to be valued. Later that day, Marlowe received an email from an unexpected source, Vesper Chen. "Ms. Ravencroft, I've spent 6 months in therapy dealing with who I became. I'm working at a smaller firm now and I'm trying to be different. I wanted you to know that what you did, showing me who I was, it was the most painful and necessary thing anyone's ever done for me. I'm sorry for who I was, and thank you for not letting me stay that person. Vesper." Marlowe stared at the email for a long time. Then she closed her laptop and looked out at the Toronto skyline. Sable had been right. The real challenge wasn't demolition, it was construction. 3 months later, Marlowe stood at a leadership conference giving the keynote speech, The Power of the Overlooked. "For years I was invisible," she told the audience of hundreds. "People looked through me, dismissed me, mocked me, and I could have let that define me. Instead, I let it fuel me." She paused, scanning the crowd. She saw young professionals leaning forward, hungry for her words. "But here's what I learned. Revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something so powerful, so undeniable that they're forced to see what they missed. It's about proving that everyone they overlooked was a diamond they were too blind to recognize." The applause was thunderous. After the speech, a line formed, dozens of people wanting to share their stories of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. Marlowe listened to each one, and to every person she said the same thing. You're not invisible, you never were. Some people just haven't learned how to see yet. Don't wait for them. Build something so bright they'll have no choice. That night in her hotel room, Marlowe opened her journal, the same one she'd kept for 10 years. On the first page was the list of names, the people who'd hurt her. She didn't tear it out. Instead, she turned to a blank page and wrote new names: Temperance, Hawthorne, Octavia, Zenith, Lyric, all the overlooked who were now thriving. This was the list that mattered now. As she closed the journal, Marlowe smiled, not the tight, controlled smile she'd perfected for boardrooms, but something real, something that reached her eyes. Revenge had brought her here, but purpose would take her further. 3 years later, Titan Ridge Financial became a case study at Harvard Business School, how one leader transformed corporate culture in 18 months. Thorne Blackwell took a mid-level position at a boutique firm in Vancouver. His colleagues said he was different, humble, willing to credit others, actually mentoring junior staff. Vespa Chen wrote a book, The Tyrant in the Mirror, My Journey from Toxic Boss to Ethical Leader. It became required reading in MBA programs. Daxon Reeves struggled initially but eventually found work in Calgary. His arrogance diminished, not gone but manageable. Cashin Whitmore left finance entirely. Last anyone heard, he was teaching high school math in Edmonton and coaching basketball. Quinton Ashford retired early. He volunteered at a non-profit helping young professionals navigate workplace harassment. And Marlowe Ravencroft. She built an empire spanning 17 companies, sat on 23 boards, and personally mentored over 200 overlooked professionals who went on to transform their industries. But her proudest achievement wasn't the money or the power. It was the culture she'd built, the meritocracy she'd created, the talented people who no longer had to be invisible. Because the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building a world where people like them can't thrive anymore. And where people like you, the overlooked, the underestimated, the dismissed, finally have a chance to shine. Sometimes the quiet ones aren't weak, they're just waiting for the right moment to roar.